Hello, hello.
Yes.
Okay, so everything is ready, right? I can start.
I can hear you.
Uh,
Hey, Maxim, I cannot hear you.
oh, really? It's fine for me. 1, 1, 1.
Hey, Maxim.
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you again.
Okay, great. So write something in this Hangout chat if there will be some technical issues. I'll try to fix everything. Okay, now we start. My session is about mix of two great technologies, which is Angular and progressive web applications. And what I want to give you today is the state of this union, how to combine these two awesome tools together. Let's start. My name is Maxim Salnikov. I live in Norway, in the city of Oslo. It's Northern Europe. I work in a company called ForgeRock. We develop digital identity platform. And as a part of my work, I always experiment with some new technologies. And Angular and progressive web apps work totally fine in this sense. I'm Google developer expert in Angular, and I run a similar meetup dedicated to Angular in Oslo. And also, I'm the organizer of NG Vikings conference. What is NG Vikings? We'll go next year for the second time. So in 2017, we had our first event in Denmark, Copenhagen. Next year, we go to Finland. Vikings love to travel. This will happen in March 1st and 2nd. And this is conference about all sides of Angular. It's organized by Meetups organizers, so it's totally 100% community driven, and we are supercharged by real Vikings power. I believe it will be super long travel for you guys to get there, but there is one simple way. We have a call for papers open now, so if you feel yourself inspired, just submit your Angular session and we will welcome you there. You are really welcome. Just follow our Twitter, ngvikingsconf, and our website is ngvikings.org. And the final slide about NG Vikings is this one. So this is how it was this year. 320 Angular developers in Vikings costumes, suits. It was real fun, 2 days of fun. Back to our today's topic. Let me show you milestones of the web, how web developed in my opinion, so you'll better understand the impact of PWA for current landscape. So we started with some static websites in late 90s, like my homepage, first one. Then we had a pleasure to spice it up with some JavaScript, and it was the era of dynamic websites. Something serious came when we got Ajax, which is possibility to send HTTP requests straight from the context of our application, so we could start building our single-page applications really seriously. Responsive web design came, and we were happy to have our applications on any platform, any screen size, any operating system. Finally, progressive web applications came in 2015. What is progressive web app? Let's refer to Wikipedia, and it's quite simple. This is just a web application that uses latest web technologies. By the way, this article on Wikipedia was updated recently. Before, it's stated that progressive web app is a new methodology of building applications. No, now this is just say, almost default way you build your application. In general, its idea is simple. It just takes the best part from two separate worlds, world of web and world of native mobile applications, and tries to combine it, tries to take the best parts from both. On the same page of Wikipedia, you will find 10 characteristics of PWA. We will not take all these points, of course. We'll take 3 of them that are most critical for real great progressive web app. Of course, everything is based on Service Worker API. It's responsible for the way our application reacts on different events. For example, it gives the possibility to intercept HTTP requests, and within this handler, we can implement the logic of caching the HTTP responses and giving back some our custom response. For example, we can serve these responses from browser cache, or we can refer to network. Application cache, app shell provides an app-like experience, immediate start of the application basic UI, even in totally offline mode. And push notifications. They allow us to send a message to our users even when the tab with our application closed and even when the browser is closed. Well, when it's almost closed, not unloaded from the memory. So we can say about PWA like about collection of APIs or umbrella of APIs. To better illustrate this sentence, I just list some of the APIs we use in PWA. Of course, none of them are related to PWA exclusively. And as a truly asynchronous concept, all these APIs based on promises. Well, now we are experts in progressive web apps. Back to Angular. How could we create progressive web app in Angular? There are many ways possible for us. First, we can create the service worker by hands. This is nothing but just a JavaScript file with some handlers and with some logic inside. So it's up to us. We can go for this totally manual way. To implement something meaningful, it will take some time. This is why we can refer to some ready PWA libraries. Almost all the libraries are framework agnostic, so we can use it with any framework and, of course, with Angular, for example. Which are the libraries? I'd say the industry standard at the moment is SW precache. A set of super handy utilities, super useful methods to create PWA just without any kind of coding, just by configuration. It's created and supported by Google. Next version of SW precache called Workbox. Probably you heard this name. It's relatively new, but it's kind of re-architected and resynced version of SW precache. So I'd go for this option if not for Angular Service Worker. Of course, if we create Angular application, it makes sense to use, say, native Angular ways to work with Service Worker. Okay, what are the packages supporting this feature in Angular? If you go to npm in Angular alias, you'll find two packages. First, called Service Worker, and second, App Shell. But let's start from the second one and let's finish with it right away, because it's hopelessly outdated and it just unfortunately, it only confuses developers with its name. So despite it's about App Shell, we generate it in a new way at the moment. So for now, everything is included in Service Worker. And this is what we call Angular Service Worker, or its shortening. You will find it many times in documentation or in code samples, NGSW, which is Angular Service Worker. The installation is very, very simple. First, we install this package. Next, we run one command in Angular CLI. You see this one, which actually does all the job for us. This command does one very simple thing. It sets the property service worker to true in apps node in settings of Angular CLI in .angular-CLI JSON file. That's it. We can do it even without this command, just by hands. So let's check what will happen after we run this magic command or add this magic line to our code. Let's build our application. It's important to use production version of the build because this will all work only in production mode. We'll see some changes. In our index.html, we'll see a new file registered there, and some, to be precise, 3 new files in our dist or build or the folder. The first file is the one we referred in our HTML, and this is just tiny JavaScript file with registration of the service worker, which is the second file, worker-basic min.js, which is Angular service worker itself. And third file is NGSW manifest.json. Well, okay, let's try to run our application now. Let's open it in the browser. Let's go to offline, like we can mimic offline mode using developer tools or just turn off our Wi-Fi. Refresh and magic. You will have your application up and running without need to be connected to the internet. Well, what's happened? Why it works? Let's start from static content caching. Let's have a look at this NGSW manifest.json. Okay, this is a list of files created by Angular CLI for us. Actually, this is our application itself. So, what Angular Service Worker does, it just takes these files, put them into the cache, and serve these files for us, even in offline mode. This is how static content caching of Angular Service Worker works. I'd love to mention that Angular Service Worker contain built using plugins architecture. So static content caching is the one of plugins. And now if we open our application, I just used like mobile frame for this, but don't be confused. This is regular web app, but just running on our mobile device. And we will have our shell of application. So this is actually UI and some basic functionality. So for example, we can have a spinner that will show that something will happen quite soon. Okay, what will happen if we try to go to other routes of our application, like for example /about, /company, /products, whatever. You will get your old good friend offline dyno again. So Angular Service Worker will not serve these files. Why? Because you have to explicitly mention all the routes of your application that's intended to be served by Angular Service Worker. We have the first one, which is just / or index.html by default, but all the next we have to specify in the next plugin called route redirection. The structure is super simple. We take the same file, NGSW manifest, and just specify where to redirect. It's obviously our index.html, and what to redirect. We just list some properties of routes. And we can specify exact match, like in my first example, which is just slash. We can specify prefixed matches, and also we can go for regexp finding. You can ask me, okay, probably what we have seen in static content cache, what was created was generated automatically by Angular CLI, because we haven't listed the files included in our application manually. But in this case, we have to go and list everything manually. And on the next build, obviously, all our changes will be overridden. Yes and no, because we will add all other settings for all other plugins, included this route redirection, in second NGSW manifest JSON, the file with the same name, but we put it into the root folder of our application. And what happens on build? Actually, our NGSW manifest is extended. So we have settings for our static plugin, which is auto-generated. It's Angular CLI, which does all the dirty job for us. It lists files. It calculates hash sum for busting the cache. On the other hand, we have second NGSW manifest generated by, not generated, but written by us. And on build process, CLI just takes these two files and merge them into one single NGSW manifest JSON. So this way we extend this functionality. Okay, now we can serve statically any root of our application. So our application works in offline. Next, we can add some extra files as a part of our application, some resources that not included in its package. We can discuss is this best practice or not, but it's outside of today's scope. So what I'm talking about, mainly it could be related, for example, to like external fonts, external icon fonts, some external resources like fonts, CSS files, maybe some images that we have to load from external website, which is not part of our distribution. How to ask Angular Service Worker to cache these resources as well, so everything will be available offline. There is another plugin called External Content. And the setting is super simple. We just specify the list of URLs we have to cache. Not we, but Angular Service Worker. For example, in this case, we on the application run, we will go to this Google static website, and we'll take this font and put into the cache. So the next time our user will start our application in offline, he will see the proper font. So what we'll have now, we have our application shell, and we can improve it by some external resources. In my example, this is just some icons. What about another important possibility of the service worker? Caching and serving dynamic content from the cache. What I mean by dynamic, for example, the one we receive by requesting some APIs from our backend. We can't cache it in advance just because we don't know which API endpoints our user will trigger during using of our application. There is one more plugin called Dynamic, and what we do here, we just specify some groups of our URLs and some rules for these groups. How exactly cache this group? Why do we need different settings for different API endpoints? Just simple example. If we have API endpoint like /API/breaking use, probably we have to go to network first in any case, even if we are offline, we have to try this because this is something that probably changes quite often. And if it's not online, for example, the site is down or we just outside of Wi-Fi network, then we can refer to cache and try to get if it's there. Second case is, for example, API/archive/1980, so some news from old years. In this case, we always have to, we can always try to check if the data is already in cache, because probably it will not change. So to optimize networking, to just save some milliseconds or even seconds on network request, we can just take it from our local cache, and if it's not there, then we'll try to get it from network. So we specify groups and we specify settings. First, we have to set the URL, and we have same possibilities like in route redirection. We have match by prefix, by exact match, or by regexp. And second, we have the possibility to tune the way we work with cache in very, very tiny details. The main kind of switch is optimize for a property, and if we set freshness, we always try to ping the network first. If we set performance, we'll try to get to cache. So this is the main switch. Also, we can tune all the tiny parameters like timeout in milliseconds and cache eviction strategy. Cool. We have added dynamic content cache to our website. So now if, for example, our user opened our website on the morning, and on the evening he or she tries to access the website, but no network, then the user will see then at least something like something that we could cache during the previous start of our application, which is much, much better than just show that server is not found or network is not available. Last plugin for today, dedicated to push notifications. This is really interesting process, how we set up push notifications and how we run them. In super short, we start subscription to push notification in our application and client side in browser. We refer to push service, which is always third-party service. Like, for example, in case of Google, in case of Chrome browser, this will be Firebase messaging service. In case of Firefox, this will be Mozilla messaging service. In case of Microsoft, this will be something related to Microsoft, but we don't care about this because a specific browser knows exactly where to ask for this subscription. So using some APIs of service worker, we refer to this service. Then service return to our application some object that we call subscription object that contains some keys, which we pass to our backend. So we store all the information on our backend, like Node.js or .NET or whatever. So these three components, application itself, which is, I mean, client-side one, Angular one, messaging service, and backend. So these are three required components to run push notifications. So this was about subscription. Now it's time to send a notification. It all starts with a backend. For example, what could it be? For example, user got a new message in his mailbox. If we create something like mailbox service. So something from database triggered event in our backend. We refer to push service again. So we send a request to send a notification to push service. Push service send a special event to service worker, Angular service worker in our case, and Angular service worker actually sends the notification. So you see in the flow of sending notification, we can totally avoid our application itself. It means that user will receive this bubble with a message or this picture or whatever, even when application is not opened, even when the tab is open, and even if you minimized Chrome. How to set up this in Angular Service Worker? You have to refer to next plugin called Push, and it's quite simple. We just specify show notifications equals true. It starts all the process. How to subscribe user to push notifications? Angular Service Worker contains a special companion library. It's just a tiny module. We have to import it. It's called Service Worker module. Like we do it in Angular way, in application module. And then in our component, we can get some methods and some classes for this. So you see Angular imports, and actually it's not Angular import, but ES6 import and Angular dependency injection when we pass the object as a parameter to construction. Then we can refer to some methods, and the method is register for push. So it initiates the dialog asking user, is it okay to get the notifications from this website, and it starts all the flow. So it refers to push service, it gets the keys, and it's our responsibility to pass it to backend. And this is actually all we need to receive push notifications. We can extend this functionality and receive. So you remember that we don't have application in sending notification flow, but if we wish, we can add it there. For example, to put some badge, like some badge over the button with a number of unread messages. We can do it using the same idea. We can subscribe to these notifications right in our Angular applications using this companion library again. Super. Now we can add push notifications to our app. Summary. We have automatic progressive web app. What do I mean by automatic? With 0 lines of code or close to 0, with just specifying some settings in JSON, we got static content cache, we got external content cache, we can cache even dynamic requests, and we can send push notifications to our users, and everything automatically. Now I wish to say a couple of words about future roadmap. It's still in beta, as you remember in one of the previous slides. It's beta version 16. And no documentation, almost no documentation, unfortunately. Luckily, I created a full-day workshop on Angular Service Worker, and I shared like 60+ page document with community. I will give a link to this in comment to this meetup, so you can get all information you have seen today, plus many more details, which we can't fit in just 30 minutes. So, roadmap. Angular Service Worker package will be moved to Angular Core. Hopefully, this will happen with Angular 5 this autumn, this September to be specific. We'll get more tight integration with Angular CLI. Remember that for now, we have to generate all the routes, not generate, but specify the routes manually. Angular CLI will do it for us. So we will get server-side rendering, which will improve in the speed of our application first render. And our goal as developers to make progressive web apps just regular default apps. It's important for our users. We just improve user experience, and in many cases we improve our developers' experience. So let's try to go for progressive web apps. Let's be progressive ourselves. Muchas gracias. It was Maxim Salnikov. Here is my Twitter. I believe we don't have much time for questions, right? We are about a bit out of schedule, so you can ping me on Twitter. My pleasure to answer your questions, and thank you very much again. Bye-bye.
Chicos, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta para Maxim? ¿Alguien quiere participar? ¿Quiere preguntarle algo? In Spanish, sorry for that.
Let me take a photo.
Okay, so Maxim, I have a question.
Yes.
Last days, I was reading a sad news for progressive web apps about the service worker support.
Yes.
About the service worker support for Apple. So they don't want support service workers on Safari browser. So I think that it is sad news for the progressive web app. So what do you think about that?
Very good question. I cannot say that they don't want. I believe they want, but they have to figure out something before doing this. Because what progressive web apps try to do is to kill the need for any kind of application store, right? Because no need to go for some app store or Google Play anymore. You just surf the web, you just load your website as regular, and your website will ask you, do you wish to install me? So no need for these multiple steps. And for Apple, this is kind of critical, because App Store is a good part of their business. This is my personal opinion, of course. So they have to figure out how to manage this out. And last week, I have seen some very positive news about support of service worker. The official state is service worker is under consideration, so it's not blocked, it's not declined. So sooner or later it will be there. And if you go to PWA Slack, someone shared the link from some internal mailing lists. Of course, it's not a secret, but like internal / public discussions inside of Apple, and the people they have started looking at this implementation. So the reasons are not technical. Reasons are, I'd say, business ones. And do not forget, we are about progressive web apps, and progressive in this term means progressive enhancement. So the application will definitely not break on iOS, and of course it's our responsibility as developers to add some extra checks, like if this service object exists in the browser. It's not only about Safari, but about some like super old browsers. And the way we re-architect our application, the way we resync the whole structure, how it loads with this application shell and something loads inside later, it improves the application anyway, even without service worker. And you'll find many articles about some business created progressive web app, and they got like 70% more visitors even on iOS devices. So it's kind of, it sounds surprisingly, but actually not. This is just well architected application. Plus, there are some like workarounds for Apple. Also, we recently discussed in our PWA Slack. By the way, I will share the link to this Slack as well. This is open community. We are more than 400 developers. We discuss PWAs, and Luis is already a member of this Slack. So I encourage every one of you who are interested in this technology to join. It's totally open and free. What I was talking about, yes, some drawbacks, like we can have something kind of offline cache even in iOS. So not a summary. It's not so bad with iOS. No, like service worker in its original state there yet, but good plans plus some fallbacks. This is my answer.
Okay, so thank you so much, Maxim. I hope we can see you here soon in another event for Angular Bolivia community. So it was nice to have you as a speaker again.
Yes,
so thank you very much.
I really love to travel, and it's my dream to visit South America one day. So hopefully this will happen one day.
Great. Un gran aplauso, por favor, para... Ok, chicos, salúdense. Bien, mil disculpas por los issues que tuvimos con el tema del sonido. De todas formas, estoy haciendo un streaming a través de nuestro canal en YouTube. Así que todo lo que